Hey, everybody. This is a very brief supplement to the end of our discussions on the issues of nationalism and imperialism that ended time period 3 in Euro. I was saving this for the beginning of our discussion of World War One because this is what will eventually lead into World War One. But this is technically still in time period 3, so since I'm probably not going to see you again this year, or at least not before the exam, I wanted to do a quick video just to highlight this one last topic, which is about the crisis in the Balkans. The Balkans, this is essentially what is southeast Europe. I will throw a map up here in a second so that you can see the area that I'm talking about. But to tie this back into the end of time period 3, remember our old friend Otto von Bismarck gave the world a few parting shots right before he died. And one of those things that he foresaw happening was World War One. And he said that the next war to destroy Europe would come out of some damned fool thing in the Balkans. Bismarck was right about that because what we're going to talk about today and the start of World War One directly comes out of a crisis in the Balkans. So Bismarck gave us one last bit of wisdom before he shuffled off this mortal coil. So let's talk about the region. So here is a map of the Balkans. We are going to be primarily thinking about the southern part of this region. Principally, we're going to be looking at Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and to a very small extent, Montenegro. Montenegro is like Serbia's little brother, and Montenegro just goes along with whatever Serbia does. So this is the area that we're looking at. All right. So let's talk about our Balkan players. Now, the first player in here, and I'm going to kind of group them into two groups. The first one is Greece. Greece, as we've mentioned before, became independent in 1831. And it became independent from the Ottomans. And if you remember back to when we were talking about nationalism and independence movements, this really upset Metternich because this was a part of an empire that was fighting to become independent. And Greek independence was something that Metternich had to hold his nose and approve of. He didn't like this because it set a bad precedent. The other three Balkan players, remember those three that we need to worry about: Bulgaria, Serbia, and I'll put them in parentheses because they're not really going to matter that much, is Montenegro. So Bulgaria, Serbia, and Montenegro who's not really that important for this story, but they're involved, so might as well throw them in here. These guys all became independent in 1878 after the Ottoman Empire lost a war to Russia. And the Ottomans and the Russians are going to be fighting a lot. They fought in the Crimean War. They fought again about 20 years after the Crimean War. They're going to fight a lot. And the Ottomans lost to Russia in this war. And part of the peace treaty involved Bulgaria, Serbia, and Montenegro all becoming independent. Now, the four of these countries, Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, are all going to form an alliance. They form an alliance called the Balkan League. And they formed this in 1912. So we're going to hit pause on the Balkan League for right now and come back to them in a second. Now, let's take a look at the great powers, because they also have their own interests in what's going on in the disintegrating Ottoman Empire. So what are the great powers' positions on Balkan independence and the disintegration of the Ottomans? So there are 5 great powers, and we'll look at each one of them briefly. The easiest one to understand is Russia. Russia wants the Ottoman Empire to disintegrate because they want territory, especially those warm water ports on the Black Sea, which was, if you remember, the point of the Crimean War. So they want to further destabilize the Ottoman Empire. The Russians have another interest here. The Russians also support the Slavic people, which in this case are the Bulgarians and the Serbians, and I guess also the Montenegrins. They support the Slavic people. They see themselves as the protector of the Slavic people. So the Russians are really easy to understand. They want territory, they want these warm water ports, and they see themselves as the protector of the Slavic people. The British are also pretty easy to understand. The British want to slow the Russians down, which is pretty much the same motivation as in the Crimean War. So they support the Ottoman Empire. France is maybe the least important of the great powers for this discussion. France has a lot of economic interests in the Middle East and a stable Ottoman Empire is good for that. France also has a history of support for the Turks. So they have long supported the Turks, and they also have to kind of be an ally of Great Britain to oppose Germany. So they don't really like the British, but the British are kind of their only ally against the Germans. Two more great powers. AustriaHungary, because remember now they are a thing. AustriaHungary supports the Ottomans because the disintegration of an old, unstable empire sets a bad precedent for them. Because at this point, Austria-Hungary is also an old, unstable empire. So they support the Ottomans because if they don't, then they could just as easily fall apart. One more great power, and that is Germany. So the German Empire wants the Ottoman Empire to disintegrate. And they do this because they want territory. They want to expand. Which, if we were to jump ahead to World War II, that's pretty much the same position that Hitler takes in Germany, in that he wants to expand east so that the Germans can expand. So this is an old idea in Germany. They want to expand at the expense of, in this case, the Ottomans. In World War II, it'll be at the expense of the Soviets. But this is a pretty common German idea. So let's get into the crisis itself. So in 1908, there's a coup in the Ottoman Empire. And in the resulting chaos, Austria-Hungary steals the Ottoman province of Bosnia-Herzegovina. They just come in and take it. This makes the Serbians mad because a lot of Serbians live in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And they know now they can't unite. So the Serbians now understand that they can't unite with the Serbians who live in Bosnia. So they turn their attention to uniting with the Serbians who live to their south, which is still in the Ottoman Empire. And so the Serbians kind of create this union of Balkan people to do the same thing. because the Greeks want to unite with other Greeks. Ottoman-controlled Greeks. And the same for the Bulgarians. So they all have kind of a common purpose. They all want to unite the peoples together. And if they're going to do this, they either have to go against the Austrians or they have to go against the Ottomans, and the Ottomans look weaker. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when the Balkan League forms, in 1912, they all don't like each other, especially the Greeks and the Bulgarians. But they all realize that if they're going to defeat the Ottomans, they have to work together. And the thing they need most of all is the Greek navy. But that's kind of a detail you don't necessarily need. All right, so the actual war starts in 1912, right after the Balkan League forms. So I think this is October of 1912. A war starts. A war between the Balkan League and the Ottoman Empire breaks out. We don't really need to think about the details of this war, but the Balkan League wins. The Balkan League wins this war, and they have taken quite a bit of territory. They've taken a lot of territory from the Ottoman Empire. The problem now comes in how you're going to divide up that territory. So divisions within the Balkan League form over who gets what territory. And the Bulgarians feel slighted. They feel like they didn't get the territory they thought they deserved. So, in 1913, they declare war on their former allies. Bulgaria gets crushed. Bulgaria is crushed in this war. The Ottomans even get back in to steal some territory back. And that pretty much takes us to the doorstep of World War I. So let's take stock of where we are for just a second. I'm going to flip the paper over real quick. So if you need to finish writing this down, pause the video right here. Okay, I assume you've paused the video and finished writing that down. I'm going to flip the paper over real quick and just write just a little bit of stuff about where we are now. So on the eve of World War I. The two powers here that we need to think about. Serbia feels really strong now. they came out the biggest winner. They came out the biggest winner of this whole thing. And now feel like they can take on Austria-Hungary for the territory of Bosnia-Herzegovina. So they feel like they can finally take on the Austrians with Russian support. Which is going to lead to a certain Archduke getting assassinated in Sarajevo, Bosnia, in June of 1914, which of course is what starts World War I. Bulgaria will join Germany and Austria-Hungary in an alliance against Serbia to get what it felt it deserved after the First Balkan War. And that takes us right up to the eve of World War I, which won't be on the AP exam, and I'm going to stop there. So this is absolutely the last little bit of information you might need for the AP exam. So this is Mr. Nissen signing off.